We're here with our friend Ted Cruz, and, among other things, what I've done in this position over the decades is I've tried to help the best of the best get as much attention as they possibly can, given the enormous amount of money the Democrat Party oligarchs spend getting their people elected. And conservative talk radio it is very, very important that we back conservatives. And when I started out in this business, just to be perfectly honest with you, it wasn't being done. Conservative hosts were not bringing on conservative candidates. I brought on Tea Party candidates. One of the ones I backed early on was Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Marco Rubio, although Marco doesn't call us anymore, but that's okay. He's got his thing going. And we do that to this day. And so we'll continue to do that. So we have our friend Ted Cruz, who's in the battle of his political career in Texas, because once again, tens of millions, $100 million being spent to lie about Ted Cruz. His opponent is a radical left-wing kook, so they're trying to turn him into a moderate, too. This is going on in every state. It's going on with Kamala Harris. Ted Cruz, how are you, my friend?
Mark, I'm doing terrific. It's always great to be with you.
So what's going on in the great Republic of Texas?
Well, we have an enormous battle. This race is neck and neck. Chuck Schumer has been explicit. I am his number one target in the country. And Schumer and George Soros are going to spend between $100 million and $150 million trying to defeat me. As you noted, my opponent, Colin Allred, an extreme left-wing Democrat, is running the very same campaign that Kamala Harris is. They're both hiding in Joe Biden's basement. They don't do press interviews. They don't do press conferences. Instead, they count on the corporate media to falsely paint them as conservative when their record is hard left. And they're counting on hundreds of millions of dollars of ads to mislead the voters. Let me give you an example. Colin Allred has opposed every serious border security bill that he's ever voted on. 3 times he's voted against the border wall. If you think securing the border is important, Colin Allred says you are a racist. He refers to the border wall as that racist border wall, and he personally pledged to tear down, quote, that racist border wall. Right now, Colin Allred is running millions of dollars of ads with him standing in front of the thing he calls that racist border wall. They're betting that they can spend so much money they can deceive the voters of Texas. And, Mark, I got to tell you, we've had multiple polls in the last 3 weeks that show this is a 3-point race or a 2-point race or a 1-point race. Last week, we had a poll that showed me losing this race that had Democrat Colin Allred ahead by a point. This is a neck-and-neck battle, and I got to say, I need the help of your listeners to go to our website. It's tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. Go to the website, go to tedcruz.org and give $25 or $50 or $100, or maybe you can give $500 or $1,000 or more. What I can tell you is $100 million is coming in, and this is neck and neck, and I need the support at tedcruz.org.
Now, one of the reasons we need Ted Cruz is he's Mr. Conservative. Can you imagine waking up on election night, ladies and gentlemen, or the next morning, and Ted Cruz loses to a radical leftist in the state of Texas, for God's sakes? Ted Cruz, has a report out right now that the Harris-Biden Pentagon is refusing to share intelligence with the Israelis about Hezbollah right now. And the Pentagon confirmed it. Yes, we're not providing them with any intelligence. There was a letter put out by Tom Cotton and McConnell that listed additional necessary military equipment that is already in line for the Israelis to receive, that you and others already voted on, that are being withheld by this administration from Israel. What do you make of this? The fact that we're withholding intelligence from the Israelis that are fighting for their survival against Hezbollah, which slaughtered over 200 Marines, as well as our embassy personnel. This is the largest terrorist militia on the planet.
Well, unfortunately, this is a continuation of the policies we've seen for 4 years from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This is the most anti-Israel White House we have ever seen in this country. From day one, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been undermining Israel, have been attacking the government of Israel, have been urging literally from October 7th, nearly a year ago, when that horrific terrorist attack was occurring. On that day and every day thereafter, the Biden administration has been pressuring Israel, do not retaliate, stop killing the terrorists, stop killing Hamas, stop killing Hezbollah. At every stage, this administration has been undermining Israel. And I got to tell you, by the way, this is another area where my opponent, Colin Allred's record is terrible. He is endorsed by J Street, which, as you know, is a radical left-wing group. They call him one of J Street's superstars. They're flooding cash into his race. Colin Allred has voted against providing military weapons to Israel in this war against Hamas. And yet he's getting flooded with cash from Chuck Schumer and from George Soros and from the left-wing donors who are funding anti-Semitic protests on college campuses across this country. Colin Allred has taken $80,000 from those same donors. He won't give it back. And that's one of the sharp differences, is they're counting on all of that money coming in, being able to deceive the voters. And it's why, to communicate with Texans, the only way you can do it, because the media is in the pocket of the Democrats, the only way you can do it is with paid advertising. That's why it matters so much when someone goes and gives $25 or $50 or $100 at tedcruz.org, because when you go to tedcruz.org, you give me the resources to tell the truth and beat back the lies. I've spent 12 years as the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate, and we need senators who will stand up and stand unshakably with Israel. We don't need senators like Colin Allred who side against Israel. And I'll tell you, Allred invited a radical Muslim cleric to the Capitol, someone who has repeatedly made anti-Semitic slurs, particularly in the wake of October 7th, and Allred praised this cleric as the very best of North Texas. I don't think attacking Israel is the best of North Texas.
I notice most of these people that hate Israel don't exactly love our country either. I saw Kamala Harris, she gave an economic speech. She doesn't give economic speeches. She gives psychopablum speeches. She's for the middle class. She's for the future. She's for an opportunity economy. And by the way, she's a capitalist. How can you be to the left of Marxist socialist Bernie Sanders? How could you spend your entire life attacking America's industries, America's workers, America's small businesses, massive taxes, massive regulations, redistribution of wealth, massive debt, and then claim you're a capitalist? How can you say you love your country when you support CRT, DEI, ESG, all this pablum against our founders and our framers and our founding document? She's a complete fraud and phony, too. So it seems to me, typically, Ted Cruz, the people who hate Israel hate America, and the people who hate America hate Israel. Is that about right?
That is unquestionably true. The enemies of Israel are the enemies of America. There is a reason the Ayatollah chants death to Israel and death to America. There's a reason Iran refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan. And, you know, the dynamic you were talking about with Kamala Harris or with Colin Allred, it is a national dynamic, which is conservatives win when we effectively articulate what we believe. Liberals win when they effectively obfuscate what they believe. And the reason is this is a center-right country. So both Allred and Harris are engaged in the process. They're both pretending to be conservatives. They're both for the wall suddenly. They're for no taxes on tips. I'm waiting for Kamala Harris to dye her hair blonde and put on a red MAGA hat. It is fundamentally deceptive. And part of the reason they think they can get away with it is the media is so corrupt that they don't think they'll ever be called out on it, which means you do an incredible job doing that. It's my job to do that, but we've got to put the message in front of the voters. And to do that, the only way you can do that as a candidate is it takes resources.
We're here with our friend Ted Cruz, who's literally tied or slightly behind or slightly ahead of this radical left-wing candidate who's running a Kamala Harris campaign with tens of millions of dollars from Soros. And ladies and gentlemen, we can't let these oligarchs buy the Senate. For God's sakes, we've got to stand up to this, and then we get our guys in and we can fix this. We need to win the presidency, win the Senate, hold the House. It's the only way we're going to reverse course. Ted Cruz, you're an expert on the border. It's affected your state. Really, a handful of states have been so brutally affected like yours, but every state is affecting the consequences of these Venezuelan gangs and MS-13 and the poverty and the drugs and all this that's taking place that was not taking place 5 years ago. And Kamala Harris's answer to everything, almost like, she is, all she knows is, I will support the bipartisan legislation immediately. Two things on that. That's not going to pass under any circumstances. But if it did, Ted Cruz, tell us why that phony bipartisan bill number 1 was not bipartisan. There's not a single Republican in the House that supported it, and probably 3 Republicans in the Senate. And number 2, there are reasons you've given me that I have repeated for why this bill is a complete disaster that was basically enshrined the worst parts of what they're doing on the border right now.
Mark, that's exactly right. This was a Chuck Schumer bill that was designed to make the border crisis worse. Understand, this open borders invasion is deliberate. Joe Biden wants it. Kamala Harris wants it. Chuck Schumer wants it. Colin Allred wants it. They look at the 11.5 million illegal aliens. They want more and more and more because they see them as future Democrats. So this bill was designed to make the problem worse. Number 1, it codified, it wrote into federal law Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's lawless catch and release policy. Catch and release is what caused this crisis. It is contrary to federal law, but this Chuck Schumer bill would have written it into federal law that the standard practice is to release illegal immigrants after they're apprehended. Number 2, it gave immediate work permits to illegal immigrants when they came to this country. Number 3, it provided taxpayer-funded lawyers for many illegal immigrants. Number 4, it gave billions of dollars of subsidies to sanctuary cities and to NGOs that are helping the human traffickers. Number 5, it went out of its way to screw the state of Texas. It provided that Texas cannot sue in Texas federal court to enforce the immigration laws, but rather had to come to the very liberal D.C. federal courts because they wanted to cause Texas to lose. And worst of all, this bill normalized 5,000 illegal aliens a day. That works out to 1.8 million illegal immigrants a year, every year, forever in perpetuity. As Chris Murphy, who was the liberal Democrat who was Chuck Schumer's lead negotiator on the bill, said, under this bill, the border never closes. That's why Kamala Harris says she supports it. It's why Colin Allred says he supports it, because they want the open border, but they want to pretend, they want to lie to the voters and say this bill would do something when they know it would perpetuate it forever.
Bipartisan, they say. It was negotiated in secret, you told me. It was dropped in the laps of the Republicans in the Senate. They tried to get a vote on it right away. The Republicans in the Senate read it. Shortly after they looked at it, some 300 pages, almost to a man and woman, they opposed it. Isn't that correct?
That's exactly right. They kept the text secret all throughout the negotiations. When they finally made it public, it collapsed within 24 hours. And by the way, the line that Kamala Harris and Colin Allred like to say is the reason it failed is because Donald Trump opposed it. I can tell you I was fighting against this long before Trump said a word about it, and the reason I opposed it, and the reason most Republicans opposed it, and the reason Trump opposed it is because it didn't solve the problem, it made the problem worse. Understand, look, when Trump was president, I worked hand in hand with him and to secure the border. And we achieved incredible success. We produced the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. That's what Biden and Harris inherited, and they deliberately broke it, and they're now spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convince people that their open border record that they caused is not, in fact, their own record.
You know, this is the most diabolical campaign probably in American history that Harris is running, that the Democrat Party and their media are running. You've been around a while. I've been around a little bit longer. I've never seen anything like this. They don't want to run on the issues. They don't want to run on substance. They are spending, right now, almost $2 billion, I've read, lying like this is some kind of a third world republic and doing all the worst tricks they possibly can to deceive the American people. Folks, let's help our buddy Ted Cruz. tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. Certainly among the most important senators in the Senate. Many would argue, like me, maybe the most important. Let's give him our support. God bless you, my friend. We wish you well.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. It's a very real fight. I need your support. Thank you for coming to tedcruz.org. I wouldn't be here without you, and I'll continue fighting as long as breath in my body. Thanks.
You got it. There are other great senators. Tom Cotton is another senator who I love. There are several really, really good senators.